Chips and Tips, everybody. I've got Pete joined with me today, and we're going to do a little catch-up. You saw his face a couple months ago when you started at Toolpath.
Yeah.
And I figured it'd be fun to just hop on here very candidly, just chat away about what's going on as... What's your title? You're the...
Head of product.
Head of product. All right.
Yes.
So you're head of product. So I'd love to hear about just the past couple of months, your time at Toolpath. You timed it up really well, where we all got together and got to see each other in person in Cleveland. I think that'd be a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah. Let's get into that. Yeah. Well, I was actually out before I fully joined. We were out there, and you were the only person at the company besides Justin and Al. And a couple others who knew this was happening because you're based out of that shop in Ohio. So it was the second time I've been out there, but that was super cool, man. For those who don't know, actually, we did a video that folks should probably check out, or Adam Morley did, that shows the whole kind of what we were doing out there. But we have a remote team, which is great because we get like such talent from everywhere in the world. Like, we're just super great people, but we don't get to see each other all the time. So we got to be in person for about a week, and man, it was good. Like, going in there, I was kind of wondering, because a lot of times those let's all get together and team build, right? Like, you don't know what the vibe is going to be. But immediately when we got there, everybody was just like getting involved and, walking indoors and just doing their own thing. And that was, I don't know, from the start, just like good validation. We have a good team of people who you just put them all in a room or in the same building rather. And they just split off and start working on stuff and get excited about it. So
yeah, that was special. Not once did I ever hear somebody say, "Hey, you're on mute." That was so fun. It was so fun to be able to just pick up a conversation and not be like, "Oh, I hope I'm not bugging them," trying to ping them on Zoom or join a huddle on Slack or whatever the channels are. Yeah, that was super special. We had an outline of what we wanted to do, what we wanted to accomplish, but there was also a lot of free time, and during that free time, people would just connect and among different departments was the most fun part too. So I got to know a lot more about the dev team, and understand a little bit more about behind the scenes of software. Jan, one of our devs, he actually was there the day after everybody left. His flight didn't leave for a little while. And Jan's a pretty great guy. He actually brought a suitcase and then clothes that he wasn't going to take home with him, so he could go to the Lego store and bring home.
Did he just trash all the clothes?
He did. Yeah, he threw them. Yeah. It was his plan all along. So,
that's
incredible. But he shadowed me for the the beginning of that day. And he's like, "Oh, I had no idea this is what you do." So it was really special. I mean, we should talk about what happened. I can plug the the utility knife, but yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about what we did there?
Yeah, I mean, it was cool because being in my role, it's product, which I didn't really know what that was, honestly, when we got into this Toolpath stuff, but kind of figuring out what the I guess how the software should look and function, and then sort of the direction and roadmap of that. So much of my job is just talking to the engineering team, the customers, customer success, all that stuff, and trying to figure out in the middle, how do we solve these needs? What technology are they developing that's at our disposal? How can we sort of steer that in a direction where all these things just kind of click between what you can develop in super intense algorithms in 3D space and all this, and how it looks, when you present it to a machinist like me or you who just wants to use it on the shop floor, and kind of making all those things click together in an intuitive way. So with that, being out there was really good for me because I could just go bug people and then just peek in on conversations and sort of understand what's going on. I'll bet a lot of folks like working remote because there's not idiots like me always like peeking at him and be like, what's that? Like, and like asking these questions. But for me, it was great. What I didn't expect is like just how much work it was. Not in a bad way, but like as soon as people started showing up, there was just so many conversations I wanted to have and like get so much out of that. And so I had to be up, like I wanted to be one of the first people in the hotel lobby in the morning and then have those conversations, get to the shop, do all our stuff that day, go to dinner, whoever's hanging out. Like one night it was just me, you, and Andy going, what was that bowling thing called? Like,
yeah, it was pretty fun. It was like a miniature bowling alley where
yeah.
they like pulled it up with the strings, and all three
Ohio's
of us
big
were.
on like weird kinds of bowling. Like we didn't do any normal bowling, but
We were probably the only people there that were like looking at the mechanism or like, oh man, how's that work? Like, oh, that's so cool.
yeah,
Everybody's
yeah.
just enjoying their time, and we're trying to figure out how it like sets all the pins.
Yeah, those things are trippy.
Yeah,
They're pretty cool though. Like for those who don't know, it's like the style of bowling alley. We'll just get into nerd territory. Screw it.
yeah.
Like you see it a lot now. I've seen at newer bowling alleys where they have like strings from the top, and then you bowl normally, and then the pin's knocked down, and it has some release mechanism where it's pulling them up. So apparently I was nerding out about it, so I was looking it up on YouTube, like how these things work and like the trends in bowling. And I guess it's a lot less maintenance because it's just a lot fewer moving parts. So I had nerded out about this before. I'd never seen one, and then we went to this place, and honestly, as soon as I didn't tell you guys because I was too embarrassed, but like as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, like we need to bowl. Like I need to look at one of these things for myself. And the mechanism was super cool because it's like kind of like on a cam is like how it works. And it's pretty much, it's nearly purely mechanical, how that whole thing works. But the bowling, I feel like it affects the dynamics of the pins a little bit. So I don't know how that plays into the integrity of the game. But that's neither here nor there. Anyways, back to our main thread of this conversation. So like stuff like that, just like morning to like all hours of the night. Like that night we were probably up till 2:30 a.m. just talking about what Toolpath could be, challenges with using it, and then like since we were just out there for this purpose, we got to just, all right, screw it, let's open up our laptops, let's like figure this stuff out. And doing that in person was really cool. And then that night I was supposed to like give our like product like roadmap presentation to the team the next day, and that night I went back to my hotel room and I just grabbed a Red Bull. I was like, screw it, like I'm tearing apart like this presentation. And I'm just like manic at that point. Making like this like chart. You saw these like charts, like how we're thinking about this and the context and all that. And at 2:30 a.m., you're like, this is a great idea. Like, this is so cool. And then the next morning I wake up on like, 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I deleted most of the presentation last night. Like, I hope this goes well. So the next day we get there and we get the team around, we do some stuff, and then I got to go up and talk about our roadmap for what's happening with Toolpath in the next quarter. And I'm just like, all right, let's throw these slides up, and I'll just have to speak to them. And it was really cool to see the team get on board with these things that are all their ideas that we've had. Like none of it was new, but to be able to be in person and kind of put it all out there for discussion and get it like concrete on paper, and really in a framework, so the whole team's just like on the same line of thinking, was cool. And to that point, we've had quite a few people like outside the company that are just involved with what we're doing. Users and people who've been watching asking like, what is our roadmap for the next quarter? Like, what are we going to be working on? So this is probably, I guess I'm allowed to share here. This is probably a good time to share what
You're the product guy, so
okay,
you can be the gatekeeper. I think you should share the three product or projects, because I love the names of them and what they represent. So yeah, just go for it.
Yeah, we'll go into it. So we've got 3 themes for the next 3 months that are happening in tandem. We have, then they're all animal names. So we have Project Golden, which is all about making Toolpath a smart but obedient piece of software, kind of like a golden retriever. So that kind of came about because there was, in using the software, it has all this information inside of it, and it's a little bit of a black box. And we've been trying to figure out in the world of like bringing AI to machining, what is like how do we actually control this? Because we don't want to just build a system that's just a black box that you can't manipulate. And then on the other end, we don't want to build something that we just start exposing the same parameters you have in CAM, and all of a sudden, okay, like here's another CAM system that like has good templates, like more or less, right? We just rebuilt another piece of CAM software. So the way that we are going about this is all about constraints. And that's really what you'll start to see coming into the Toolpath product over the coming months, is basically having the engine expose some of its thinking, and then you can give it not necessarily like a hard selection. You can still do this, but like not necessarily so much, hey, I specifically want like this particular feed rate and this and that. You can still do that, but really the way we want people to interact with it is based on like intent, right? Expressing intent. So that greatly, from an interface perspective, reduces the amount of checkboxes, and it also gives us a place to start learning. One of the things I think is really exciting about like the future of CAM automation is that it'll become unique to different shops. I don't think this mission we're on would be worth doing if we were trying to just do a one-size-fits-all approach. So with that, we need to be capturing intent of what you're actually trying to do, as well as context, right? What machines do you have? What tools do you have, et cetera? So what does the engine have to work with? And then what's your intent about, hey, I want this constraint, or hey, the engine screwed up here. Rather than saying, I want to change this particular parameter, and now that just lives in the part and it never affects other things moving forward, we want to say, hey, engine, you thought about this wrong. This is the way we think about things in our shop, right? And then that gets expressed in that part. And then Toolpath itself remembers all that stuff moving forward and begins to have more tailored results. I think that's also a really good way to make sure that we're useful in shops who are doing things in like clever, unique ways. So for example, like in my old shop, we'd be on a horizontal. So there was a lot of trying to be clever about the work holding and how you orbit it around the fourth axis. So you're kind of hitting it from these particular angles that are around one axis, and a out of the box CAM software that's optimized for, let's say, just 3 axis or 2.5 on a vise, wouldn't necessarily have those same considerations, and you wouldn't necessarily want to train an AI specifically for horizontals, because now it's okay, who's horizontal, right? Are they doing vices? Or they, like what are they doing, right? It needs to happen elegantly in my shop, and as I'm moving forward, I need to be teaching it while I'm making things. I need to be learning from what I'm doing. So that was a little bit of a ramble, but that's like the basis of like Project Golden, which is it's just super exciting to me, because I think it's now that we've kind of crossed the hurdle of AI making good toolpaths, now we're getting into, okay, how does this actually fit into a shop specifically? So that's gold.
We have, that was an excellent explanation. We actually have some pretty poor grammar behind this that we use internally. We say may, must, and mustn't.
Do you know the background of may, must, mustn't?
Yeah, I feel like I was there when it formed.
Oh,
it was gosh. Al.
Yeah, so may, must, mustn't.
It's when you were at the shop for the very first time.
I was at the shop, and we were talking about require, allow, and exclude. So allow is, hey, engine, you can do anything. And then require is you must do this. And then exclude is never do this. I'm telling you, don't do this. Figure out the rest of the result, because I'm giving you this constraint. And then you can add more and more constraints. And then somebody said may, must, and can't. And I was like, well, it should be may, must, and mustn't, because that's grammatically consistent. And I meant that as a one-off joke just to annoy the people in the room, and now it's stuck.
Al's gone on like multiple podcasts and said that, and I've actually like clipped, being the content guy, I've clipped a lot of stuff of Al saying that. I'm like, oh, this is sticking. So be careful what you say.
I
Be careful
know.
what you say, Pete. That's so funny.
Yeah, there's a real problem of me saying things as throwaway lines, and then they accidentally stick around. So, um, but hey, it's good. I think it's honestly a good framework to think about it. It's also the way you talk to golden retrievers and
Yeah,
train them. So
I would
that
know. I have one.
yeah, you have one. There you go.
Teddy's going to be the mascot for this project.
Teddy already is the mascot for this project.
That's right.
But yeah, so that's golden. And then the next one's Project Otter.
I'm excited about this one.
Yeah, I really am too. With getting into Toolpath, there's quite a bit of context you need, and one of the things that like frustrates me about a lot of software in industrial is that like it requires so much of you before it provides any value. You have to put in all this information, especially with an automated tool, where you need to put in a ton of information because it needs to know what it has to work with. In Toolpath, I think even predating my time, even it's done a pretty good job of making it easy to onboard, relatively speaking. But there is this kind of built-in assumption that you have like presets and all these different things, and they have to match one-to-one in a somewhat rigid way so the engine knows what it has to work with. So that's kind of tool libraries, tool presets in those libraries, stock setups, etc., and like quoting presets, etc. So there's all these like building blocks that need to be distinctly defined. And Project Otter is about making that experience of getting in there just stupid simple. And the way we went about like kind of scoping how to do this was I just hopped on a bunch of onboarding calls and demo calls with Paul Klaus. So I just watched and took notes and would see the themes of the things he was asking, the places that that people were getting hung up, the questions that were there, and then just had multiple like days worth of notes. And then we got together. You were involved, Ben. Paul was involved. Al, Justin, and we're like, okay, how do we build an experience that is just basically Paul, without doing like a Clippy style thing, but basically like capture all that information that Paul captures, and then the stuff. Okay, you need to go here and configure this. Now you need to do this. Okay, hey, can you add all these presets? We want to do that just instantaneously, built into the software. So Project Otter is going to be, it's a theme around that ease of use and ease of onboarding. There's a couple parts to it. We're going to have a new onboarding experience for new users when they come in. They're going to have a really nice way to set up Toolpath so it understands your shop based on just a bunch of really simple questions. What kind of materials do you use? What tooling vendors do you prefer to use, etc. And what kind of parts do you make? So Toolpath will start with a bunch of information about what's going on in your shop. So our kind of North Star metric with this is just like, how do we reduce as much as possible the time to first meaningful customized result, rather than just throwing a step file and now you have a result. We want one that actually works in your shop. Hey, I could go machine this after just like answering 5 or 6 questions from Toolpath. So that's the onboarding experience. And then also with that, there's just things that we're implementing throughout the application. By the time this comes out, I think we'll already have magic tool uploads, which is where during the upload process, Toolpath is smart enough now to just see, hey, these need presets. These tools are going to be run in aluminum because they're a bunch of 3-flute, tools, 2-flute tools, etc. And it's going to be smart enough. It's just going to say, hey, we built this cut config. We applied all these presets. These are starting points. They work kind of like around, a Haas. Basically, what we did is we took pre-tool, and actually here, I'll share the story behind how that became a thing. I was preparing a bunch of tool libraries that we could use from different vendors. And believe it or not, there's a lot of tools that exist, and scrolling through them is a nightmare. So I hit up, and I had to run them all through Pre-Tool with like certain like settings, whatever. And for one or two libraries, Pre-Tool is an incredible time-saving tool. But for like 50 libraries, it's just a lot of clicking and setting filters and whatnot. So I hit up our developer, Mark, who built Pre-Tool, and I said, hey, is there a way I can run this from my command line? Like, can I like call our API or something? And he's like, oh, just like it's built in already. I use it for debugging. I was like, okay, let's hop on a call. Show me this like right now. So he hops on, and in less than 5 minutes, he's like, yeah, you just do this. Here's how you run it. Have a blast. Like, just go dig around, see what you can do. And then I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I was just on a call with Paul, and he did this process with somebody coming in to like walking somebody through processing with Pre-Tool, applying these like magic filters and stuff. And I messaged Paul and I said, hey, do you do that same thing? Like, here's the notes I took. It took 14 minutes on that call from the start of the call to once we were at this point. Do you do these same steps? Did I take these notes correctly? He's like, yeah. I was like, all right, I have something cool. And basically we built that right in the software, and I was just playing with it. It happens in less than a second. It does all that. So 14 minutes down to 1 second is not a bad improvement.
I'll go a little bit further just for people that don't quite understand tool presets and all that stuff. Just say you have a bunch of tools. They can machine aluminum, stainless, whatever. You've just got a bunch of tools, a bunch of materials, one tool library. The magic tool, from what I understand, tell me if I'm wrong. This is actually just a good conversation in general. Yeah. The magic tool library, or the magic generate button or whatever, assumes a lot of things. So it assumes if you have 3 flute and under, it's an aluminum cutting tool, and then 4 flute and over. But it'll also look at the name of the tool itself. So if I have a rougher and I call it rougher, or I think even rough or something similar to that, the magic behind it will look at that description, and it will eliminate all the finishing presets in it, because it's like, well, you're not going to be, using this for a finishing operation. It's so there's some magic behind there, because before we would encourage people to take their giant library of multi materials and then break them down into individual libraries based on material. And we would ask them in Fusion to sort by flute count, is kind of how we broke it down by material. And this was actually before you can actually sort flute count now in Pre-Tool, because Fusion tool libraries were like, it was just took a long time to filter. And so that became pretty monotonous. And then very often, like you said, Paul, or even I, or anybody trying to set up tool libraries, they would have to go through every preset. And if it's a roughing tool, take out finishing. If it's a finishing tool, take out roughing. And if that was such a repetitive thing we were doing, it just made sense to make it literally one button. So it is super exciting in that sense. Yeah. So hopefully that explains it a little bit better. I think you did a great job, Pete. But
yeah, it's pretty neat. And one thing about the magic, this is kind of a realization that I think Justin was the first to like point it out, is most people just want something that works as a starting point, right? Like, okay, fine. Like, software company, you can sit there and tell me I need to put in every parameter exact and like specifically like what RPM. It's like, well, in general, as a starting point, I need just feeds and speeds and the correct tool geometries that I know I can just hit straight to the machine and rely on the result. From there, sure, yeah, I can nerd out. Hey, I spent a lot of time on this rougher. Let me optimize like the feed rate or whatever. But just take the things out of the book. Another cool thing that like Pre-Tool does, I didn't know this actually. You knew it, but maybe a lot of people don't know that it actually like accounts for like length of the tool. and has like some different like math it's doing. So it's not just like your basic speeds and feeds calculator.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
It's a lot smarter than that. So it provides really good starting points, even for like weird tools. Um, and they're not super aggressive. You can crank up the aggressiveness. Like I know when I put like my Enshu tool library in there, the output from pre-tool is quite a bit different than what I run in my shop, because my Enshu tool library is set up for like very scary like production values,
hmm
which honestly I think is a good thing that pre-tool doesn't like you know, you wouldn't want a tool where it's like, yeah, just throw all your tool libraries for this and it's like 400 inches a minute on this like half-inch tool, and let's just like go crazy, like all your facing passes should just be like, and in like most cases that people are using Toolpath for, especially right now, it's like you don't need to do your facing at you know 400 inches a minute, because you're doing one or two parts. You're not doing like a palletized system. So all that to say, um, pre-tool makes really great starting points. And if I want to do something on basically any machine I walk into, I would start with the pre-tool presets, and then if I really, you know, need to optimize something for production, all that information is there. And that kind of, you know, plays into the kind of the Project Golden theme of like, we want it to be smart off the bat, and then we want it to be obedient in the places where you say, you know, I really care about this result here, without locking you out of it. Um, so it's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. We should probably hit Armadillo, because then we can talk about the real thing that I'm
Oh yeah.
excited about.
Quick plug for Pre-Tool. It's completely free. It's an app that we created here at Toolpath to help people kind of get into the ecosystem. That's probably not even the right word, but to seamlessly get into Toolpath. But we've left it completely open for anybody. So it's pretool.toolpath.com,
Mm-hmm.
and you can dump Fusion tool libraries in there. If you're struggling if you're struggling with a slow Fusion tool library, then dump your tool library into pre-tool, and you can do a lot of organization and filtering that way, because I know it can get kind of slow in Fusion. So
Yeah, it'll
anyway,
really help your CAM workflow if you're just in Fusion and you're not even using Toolpath or anything, and you want good starting points. Like, because when you're in the world of like running a machine shop, it's like, do you really have time to sit down and you know, nail out all your presets? Some people do. Uh, I know in my shop, I put that off for a long, long time, and I'd see like on Instagram. This is before I even knew Tim, but I would see, you know, people like Tim posting, and they have, you know, the Vice model. They have like the most perfect presets in the world, and I'm like, well, yeah, you work for Autodesk. Like, you have all day to set your presets. Sorry, dude, I got to ship parts.
yeah,
At the time, I didn't know that Tim actually is. I didn't know him. I just knew him as the Autodesk guy. I didn't know he had like a massive machining background, and he actually knew something that I didn't. Um, which was that time investment is just worth so much down the road.
yeah.
But pre-tool makes it easy. So yeah, it's a great tool. I wish it existed back when I was running a shop, but that's kind of the theme of going
Did
from
you?
machining to software. Like, you get to build stuff that you wish had existed.
Yeah, that's true. We could build the future. Did you ever hear that Tim was kind of bragging when he first started Toolpath how dialed in his library was, and his presets were all set and so nice. And then he realized that he's making a preset when he needs to make one. So he's got maybe capitalized aluminum rough, and then roughing, and then capitalized rough, and it just like did not translate super well. And he's like, wow, I realized I'm very like inconsistent when building presets. So that's
Yeah.
another nice thing about pre-tool is it does all that kind of like monotonous like work of building out all those preset names, and then you can go in and fill them out how you want, and so it gets you a little ahead of the game in some way. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's pre-tool.
Cool.
What's Armadillo? Project
Okay,
Armadillo.
Project Armadillo is about battle hardening the Toolpath cam so we can get it ready for a public beta. The Ohio trip was really the perfect place to start that off. Having all of our engineering team out there actually making parts. Well, actually, why don't you tell them what was
And
made,
what part
Ben?
did they
Yeah.
make?
What part did they make?
So I think it was about a week we started prepping beforehand, and we were trying to think of um, what everybody could take something home that was like not super simple, but also like still a bit complex, but we could still machine it and everything. And so just on the side, I'm not trying to plug anything because I actually don't make these right now, but this is called the slide. And you push up on this lever and it clicks in and it holds a utility blade in there and it's easy to change out. Anyway, so there's a body and then there's a lock bar. And so we put together, I think we had about 8 to 10 hours across 2 days of kind of a class put together where Scott Moyes, he did a lot of work on making a really well put together demo on how to use Fusion CAD. So they designed up the lock bar in CAD, and then also camming apart so people could really appreciate and empathize with machinists and programmers, especially our dev team. And then we got to hop on the brother and the Sile and run parts
And break a tool or two, right?
yeah, break some tools. I mean, it was such a good thing for I guess just all of us to see. Just not everything always goes perfectly. I'll be the first to admit the very first, and I did a couple of test runs, but the very first time everybody was there and we like started the clock when we went to machine. Uh, I did something dumb where I was using a form tap with a cut tap drill size, and it did not like that, but it did it like 4 or 5 times and hated it. It was like mushrooming because form tap doesn't actually make any chips, and it's a significantly smaller, or sorry, it's a bigger hole for a form tap. But I was using a small drill size for like a cut tap, and so the minute we started the class, we like ran it and I was super confident and boom, snapped the tool. And I was just like, oh man. And the clock is ticking. So we've got people, all these different classes. And so we ran into, some broken tools. The coolant accidentally got turned off on our down cutting end mill from Dylan. Thank you, Dylan. Dylan Jackson, letting us borrow / destroy one of your what he calls
Wait,
the top
he
hat
lent you
tool.
a tool and then you broke it?
Yeah, I think we have two top hat
No.
tools. He had them like custom made and ground and everything, but they're a down
No.
cut profile specifically for machining top hats.
Okay.
That's all he uses it for because it gives it that down cutting force.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have coolant, you're pushing all those chips just downward straight into the cut.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, we chip welded like instantaneously.
Oh
And
gosh.
then we had another issue too where a chip got stuck under one of our soft jaw, I think our second op vise, and all of our chamfers on the second op came out wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't really plan for those kind of things,
Mm-hmm.
but they were like great experiences where especially our development team could just like see real world examples of like things that you run into that even though it could be perfect all the way through software, there's still all these other elements that can ruin somebody's day pretty quick.
Yeah, I
So
was sitting there kind of like people were bummed that like this happened or that, and I'm like I'm glad this is happening because people need to
yeah,
see it. Like I think when you're in the software world, the messiness of the real world, it's not that you don't know that the real world's messy, but you get focused on solving problems in a very tight, constrained, deterministic environment.
mm,
And sometimes you need like a real like kick in the pants. And the actual feeling of like, the responsibility of running the machine, like there's an emotional aspect
Hmm.
that you remember. Like you don't forget that. So like you can be aware, oh yeah, there might be a chip here or yada yada, but until you run it, like you don't know what that feeling's like. So to see, one of our developers, go in front of a machine and the thing goes, or whatever's wrong, I'm like, awesome. Like
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
like you've earned your stripes a bit. Like, it's good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely was bummed in the moment because I was trying to, several days before, a week before, really dial in everything, make sure that we had everything figured out. And yeah, you run into those situations and you got to make the best of it. But now I like to say that I planned all those issues and I planted a chip under there, and Justin purposely turned off the coolant that I didn't know about. So yeah, it was super fun. The whole week was about kind of building as a team, but also building our sympathy, empathy, just for the machinists and programmer and people who are using our software and relying on it. Because yeah, it's so important. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. And then I got to spend, I ended up staying an extra day too, to be able to kind of
that's right.
fuss around in the shop, spend some time with you and Justin. And that was helpful for me. Actually, I kind of want to share this. I shared a little bit with you. Um, so after selling my shop and going like chatter full time, I was really burnt out on running a shop. Um, and it really becomes a hustle, and I love it. Like, it's one of those things like you love and you give your whole life to it and everything. And you'll do anything for it. But it really felt like a lot of work. And I've run machines obviously since, like, pretty consistently, but always under the pressure of a deadline, or like, hey, we're testing something for chatter, we got to make this test part, or we got to knock this out, and I'm in a shop that's not mine, etc. And being out there in Ohio for me personally was like genuinely an emotional experience.
Oh wow.
To be there in that environment, where the shop is nicely set up and I can just experience the joy of, like, this sounds silly, but I was just deburring a part, and like I know how to deburr a part. Um, but it's become such a thing, like just like always production, like go go go, right? You forget
Mhm.
about like all the tricks and knowledge you build up and whatever. Like you don't really have an appreciation for that when you're in the thick of it. But in that environment, I was like, I'm having fun deburring this part. I'm having fun figuring out like the fastest way to load this saw. Like, and
Nice.
I know it sounds silly, but it was genuinely emotional for me because
Mm.
it brought back the feeling of this thing I love so much, and being able to do it. And then the third day we went to, what was that place, HGR?
HGR, yeah,
Yeah.
they actually have a sale this Saturday, and like tons of stuff is half off. They've got a breakfast and everything. I think Justin's going to go and try to buy some stuff for the shop or
Is that
whatever,
lathe
but
half off? Is that not?
it's not. It's like a certain. I think it's certain categories and
Mhm.
stuff, but like it's super special. You should fly out here just for Saturday.
That'd be sweet. I'm gonna come back with a machine though. Um, but yeah, it was just cool to kind of re-experience like that joy of making things in that environment. It really reignited like the, I don't know, just passion for filing
Yeah,
a piece of stock right so it fits nice in there, deburring a part and getting it like just perfect, like all that little stuff, is just a real joy. And it's been a while since I've been able to do that in a lower pressure environment
yeah,
where I can just appreciate the craft. So that was really good. So thank you for that. Like, honestly, Ben,
Cool. Nice.
like you put that all together, and it was really meaningful to me. And I think to the other folks there, it was both a great learning experience and a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. And were you even having fun when you pressed the pin in wrong to the lock bar? I just got like mushroom over the
Yeah,
aluminum.
I screwed that up. I thought I was too cool for the. I'm like, I don't know how to put in a pin,
Yeah.
and I didn't read the thing because and if I had read the process, I would have remembered. Oh, there's a fixture for it that Ben thought about because he's experienced with doing this assembly process, and me as a boss, like if somebody did that, I know how to put in a pin and did it. I'd be like, it's on the
Yeah.
document. What are you thinking? And then of course, we're all guilty of the things that we get on other people about. So that.
Oh yeah.
So you were like, oh, we can get that out. I'm like, no. We're leaving that screwed up like galled aluminum on the end of that pin so
Yeah.
that I it's just a reminder to me now that that I don't know better than the documentation.
Yeah. Well, it was like it's a press fit, a pretty light press fit,
Mhm.
but you put it in from the wrong direction and it just mushroomed out or something or
No, I just you had a way to line it up, and I was
yeah.
like, oh, I can do this. I'm gonna hit it with the arbor press, and then it's gonna sit this way.
Oh,
So I'm just gonna bump it a little bit, and
yeah.
then okay, it's good, going a little bit more. But what happens when you're doing that method, depending on how much interference there is, like you're always building up some amount of material whenever you're
Yeah.
cockeyed. So by the time I was straight, it was just carrying this like ball of aluminum with it. So
That's
whatever.
funny.
Um,
Yeah.
but
No,
yeah,
it was great. It was super special. We hope to do at least I think twice a year get together as a team. Maybe it won't be to the level of machining, a utility knife or something, but I
Mhm.
think there needs to be elements of the whole process involved. Um, and actually, maybe we should go back to the Armadillo project
Oh,
and talk
that's
a little bit
yeah.
about where we're headed for cam automation because that's pretty exciting too.
Yeah, so that was the oh, that's how we got on this topic of the
Yeah,
actual
yeah,
machining part. So there's a good kickoff to Project Armadillo, um, which I guess Justin has an open invite for our engineers to come in and intern with him as well in Ohio.
yeah.
Um, uh, so that they can get more time on the machines. But basically, the idea is we're gonna uh, run parts start to finish with Toolpath in kind of a no excuses way where our automation does a lot, but the cam is not ready because very often there's edits you have to make. Like I started poking around at the cam and I was like, oh my gosh, like once I have my stuff set up, this is great. Toolpath's giving me this warning or that warning. That's fine. I can drop it into Fusion and delete that toolpath, swap this. Okay, we're good. Like this thing already just saved me a huge amount of time. And so I'm like, this is great. But what we really want to get to, like with our vision, is we don't want to be a assistant to the cam programming. We want to be like serving the programmer, right?
You don't want to
So
be Dwight from The Office, assistant to the cam
assistant
program.
to the cam programmer, yeah. But there is the aspect which we do now of really speeding up the programming process. But we do want to be the full autopilot, and an autopilot is not that great if sometimes it just crashes, right? And you have to constantly be watching it, and at that point it's something that helps, right? So Project Armadillo is taking our the toolpaths that we're generating and going from something that you can bring into cam, poke around at, and change, which I think is incredible already, to actually on a specific set of parts. We're doing one part every 2 weeks that you need to be able to drop this part into Toolpath, and we need to get a straight up machinable result out of it that is actually made, and any little hiccups. There's no excuses for a little adjustment here, or we're gonna do that in Fusion. We'll just like swap this. It's like Toolpath needs to get it dead right. So I believe Justin and a few others, or maybe you were involved with this, Ben, like came up with a set of parts that are going to be, over this course of time that are trying to represent these different use cases, and really we're holding our own feet to the fire in terms of like, okay, let's set us up for some challenges. Like this part is going to be challenging in this way and this way. We want to represent a large amount of use cases, not just come in and say, okay, here's a part that we know Toolpath is going to do really well, and then we're going to make a video on it and we're going to show it off. And then everybody's going to know that, like, okay, these guys are marketing, look at them on their part that they designed specifically for all the places where they know their software is going to get it completely right. We're taking the opposite approach, being like, all right, let's find stuff that's going to be challenging that we're actually going to have to put dev resources, not just user workarounds towards, to really hit all the parts of this CAM automation problem.
Yeah, exactly. Justin calls it eating our own dog food. I'm sure there's a bunch of other ways you can cut it, but I'm not sure if many people know, but I started at Toolpath. I was like technical operations manager. I just got to make parts, and we did a lot of Xometry work, some job shop stuff, but we were trying to like do R&D with Toolpath. A lot of it was in the design advisor days, right? So we weren't actually sending CAM. We had the ability to, and we did sometimes, but just even where the CAM automation has come in the past, just like 3 to 4 months, has been incredible. I would have loved to have had the CAM automation side of things, about a year ago when we were making parts for Xometry and job shop stuff. So it's really exciting because we're eating our own dog food. We're holding our feet to the fire in the fact that we need to be, of course, using our own product and feeling confident about it. And I will kind of segue into what happened yesterday, because I think it's good to point out. Yesterday we had a webinar, and actually this won't be yesterday because it's coming out in like a week. So a week ago or whatever, we had a webinar on CAM automation, and we really wanted to take apart in Toolpath, shove it into Fusion using the CAM automation feature, and edit what needed to be edited, and then run the first op. And Al and I were working on that together, but the beginning of this week, I just kept running into issue after issue, and it basically became a Toolpath Chronicle part where I'm trying to machine this part. It shouldn't have been difficult to machine, but I was having a lot of issues. I broke several tools. The spindle got jacked on the orientation, I think from one of the crashes. So the Speedio, when it went up to change tools or release a tool, the drive dogs, I think, were in the wrong orientation, and it just it sheared off one of our tool holder pockets, like that actually holds a tool.
What?
And yeah, this was just like a day before. This was a day or two before the webinar, and it was like stressful, and I couldn't figure out. Turns out we were sending keep tool down, or sorry, retraction in Fusion. Minimum retraction was selected instead of like full retract, and so it was dog legging, which I can't explain dog legging super well. But when it was rapiding on a non-cutting move, it was running straight into the stock because it was trying to
running rapids below the top.
Yeah.
Isn't there a setting in there for like use G1 under top height or something? Or
well,
G1
yeah, there is. It was using rapids, so G1 would have helped. Al said though that that's not also the best way to do it, because if you have rapids turned out like 5% or something, and then like you have a feed move or something programmed at like 1200 inches per minute, he's like, that's like a code brown. So this unfortunately we were sending something from Toolpath to Fusion that was overriding a default that I had, and so we actually mentioned that in the webinar, and we're like, hey, we we want to be fully transparent where we're at, but that's the whole reason we're doing this, what we call Toolpath Chronicles, this CAM automation, making sure that we get all the way through the workflow. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was good, but it's, it can sometimes be tough, and it's like, man, breaking tools and shearing shearing holders off the machine.
Yeah, and that is kind of one of the, I think it's cool about this Project Armadillo, and then Toolpath Chronicles are kind of our documentation of all this. But I think it's cool to really have to, or basically what you're doing is putting an inappropriate amount of trust in Toolpath that we wouldn't ask any users to do right now. We're very clear and transparent about the capabilities. So put an inappropriate amount, or you'll put, I suppose, an inappropriate amount of trust in Toolpath and see, okay, what happens here, right? Because that's really the only way we can push it forward to this vision of just getting all the way straight from step file, part input, and G code out that we can trust is by kind of taking those hits ourselves.
Yeah, and that was an inappropriate amount of trust, I guess. Unfortunately, the simulation showed it was perfectly fine, but the simulation doesn't account for non-cutting moves. And so you
In
could
the fusion
see,
simulation, right?
yeah, the fusion simulation. Yeah. And I'm not really sure how we would have figured that out, but it had something to do with, the acceleration of the X and Y. And as it's rapiding, it looks like a linear path on the fusion simulation, but it just goes and then just blows up the tool. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, man, you can check all the boxes, but until you're watching the machine. And so, yeah, we're definitely doing the work there. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I have something I actually want to show you, Ben. Have you played with our tool recommendation engine yet?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I'm really excited actually to see it, and if you're cool with it, we can also share the screen in the podcast. But yeah, for sure,
I'll share it in a second. But by this point, we've announced the tool recommendation engine, which originally was kind of an interesting thing that Toolpath might be able to do in terms of, seeing what tools are compatible with this feature. Like, let's say you have like a tool library, for the tools in your machine. It's like, okay, we could use this, but we also could use this, this, and this. So that's what was built. And then at some point, a few months ago, Justin and the team and Al had this idea that you might be able to throw a ton more tools at this thing at that step, and figure out what to do with that, and have the engine process through all those tools, not just the tools you have in your machine or in your shop. So that was something that was on the table and developed, and we were trying to figure out, okay, exactly, where does this sit in the actual use of a shop now that Toolpath can look through a lot of tools. And I became more and more excited about this as we talked, and even Ben, like we were talking a couple weeks ago, about like, okay, like how do we talk about this feature, right? What matters here? And it's like, okay, well, what problems are we solving, right? Okay, we can show a bunch of compatible tools, great. Well, we save time looking through your own tool library for the compatible tool, but since we can now throw a ton of tools at it, we can actually throw entire catalogs of vendors' libraries in there as well. So you can pick, I mentioned earlier, you might have caught it with the onboarding experience, the vendors that you like to use. We are building those into Toolpath now. We're starting with just a couple catalogs from a couple vendors, but we're going to be expanding that out to even more and more vendors. And Toolpath will prioritize your current library, but also allow you to bring in tools if there's a feature that doesn't have a compatible tool. So when you think about this in the context of like let's say just like a 1/2 inch end mill or 3/8 end mill, that's not all that important. Like maybe if like, I don't know, my end mill's out of stock or like some weird thing, right? Great. Like tell me, that the Kennametal version of this. Okay, cool. Like that's handy. I'll swap that in. But where it gets really just a huge time saver is when you're doing smaller parts. I know for me in my programming process, if I have, since like I wouldn't do a ton of really small stuff, but then when we got into electronics enclosures, there were a lot of really small radius stuff with like weird reaches, et cetera, et cetera. And there's quite a bit of time spent like going through these catalogs to just figure out, okay, what tool has the geometry for this feature? How can I have it like as choked in as possible? And then you're maybe only bringing this tool into the library for that one part you're doing, and not having the time to save it into your grander library of stuff you're using. And then maybe at a certain point that tool graduates. So what the tool recommendation engine does is if there's a feature that it can't solve for with the tools that you have in your own tool library, so it'll tell you, hey, we have from this vendor, you can get this part number. Do you want to add this in? And it just shows it to you instantly in Toolpath. So no looking in catalogs anymore. It'll say, hey, this has the right corner radius, the right reach, the right flute length, etc. And it'll give you a couple different suggestions and tell you exactly, highlight in red, hey, these features are the ones that will get resolved. Currently, they're red. But if you hit this, now these features are machinable. So bring this tool in, and then it goes and it reprograms with that tool. So that sounded like a kind of nice to have at the beginning. I'm one of the few people in the world who has actually used it because we just finally made it, or Brad made it like playable yesterday, and it is pretty incredible. Let me just screen share here.
Yeah,
Ben, I'll probably send you a better quality screen record, but just so that you can see what I'm doing here. I'll pull this up.
Yeah, I can see it.
So I have these parts, and here, great. And this is the thing I discovered, right? So we'll put up on the screen what the normal tool recommendations look like. So you can go in and you can see, okay, I've got this feature. It's not machinable, but here it is. It'll correct these features if I just import it. So I just click import, and then I regenerate the part. And then now that tool is included in what the engine has to play with. So
hold up. You're not screen sharing the right thing.
I'm going to be sending you the actual recording. Can you see me moving around here?
Now I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll send you the recording.
Okay.
So it'll tell you like these features will get resolved, and then you'll go through and say, okay, I want this tool. And then it'll regenerate with that tool in play with the engine. Now, here's the cool thing I discovered, Ben, that you haven't seen yet. I made this cut config called "Oops, all recommendations," and I kind of hacked this together because I wanted to test a really cool theory. Right now, we don't support having no tool libraries, but we will as your main tool libraries. So I just made this one stupid tool library that's like a 1.8 tap. So that's the only thing the engine has to play with.
Okay.
And then I enabled a bunch of these libraries built into Toolpath here for my recommendations. So I'm going to add those in, and then maybe I'll add in this default tool library here. So these are built into Toolpath already. These are not anything that you have to upload. Toolpath is already aware of these for recommendations. So really all I've given it myself is just this one tap to work with.
Okay, gotcha.
All right. Do you see where this is going?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So this is pretty neat. I'm going to throw this fixture plate at it. Let's see. Simple stock part with fixture. So I'm going to go in this project, and I'm just going to upload this part, and all it has to work with is this tab. So I'll just do this stock part with fixture. And it's going to go through, and it's going to analyze, and what I should get is a 0% machinability. And this is on purpose. I promise you I'm not crazy.
Okay.
So let's let this go.
Well, yeah, at least we're not like side milling with a tap. So
Yeah, that
that's
is
good.
good. You shouldn't be doing that.
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, look at that. You added an assembly too.
Yeah, I like to make things hard.
Nice job.
So if you haven't seen our bodies thing, you can actually select, multi-bodies. So I have this part, I have this fixture. We're just going to mess with this fixture now. So check this out. This is what I did on purpose. I screwed everything up, and I don't have a tool for any of this. 0% machinability. And since I'm being hacky here, it actually I've purposely broken Toolpath. And given it nothing to work with. But what's really cool is I have these tool recommendations here. And the challenge I have just issue after issue, right? Because nothing's machinable. And my thought was, can I just use the recommendations and get to 100% machinability without ever telling Toolpath anything about my shop, just it knowing, hey, here are some vendors. So let's see if it works.
You're telling me 3 tools is going to machine that whole part?
That's so there's cool. A second thing that's really cool about what it does.
Okay.
That I'll get to in a moment. But let's first see if we get to 100% machinability.
Very cool.
We're going to wait. So the idea here that's also neat, I was actually just at a thing 2 days ago talking with a bunch of engineers. And, they have a different problem than I have. For me, it's, look at that, 100% machinability. All features now machinable. So here, let me kind of explain some stuff about this. So I was talking to these engineers last night, and they had access to machines, but they have a different problem than I have. Because my problem is I have to look through for weird features. Like I have my tool library in my machine, but I've got this thing with this 30 thou floor radius, and I got to be reaching super deep, and this tiny radius, right? So the tool recommendation engine works great for me adding something on top of my library. But what I wanted to test yesterday, and it made sense in theory that it should work, but for it to actually work was pretty nuts, is if you're somebody who doesn't know how to navigate a tool library or a tool catalog. Somebody who doesn't even know necessarily who the vendors are, right? Like you go in and you're like, okay, I've heard of Haas because I vaguely know machining, but I'm just an engineer at this place. But I don't have access to all the catalogs. I don't know who our vendors are, et cetera, et cetera. You can now put a step file into Toolpath with no tool libraries configured, and Toolpath will tell you exactly what tools you need and where to buy them from.
That is really slick. That's so cool.
Yeah. I can't believe it worked. So I'm pretty stoked. That's 100% machinable. Now, here's the other interesting thing that I found as a byproduct of this. And keep in mind, what I'm showing here is totally a hack. We didn't even intend for it to work this way. And I've told Toolpath that the only tool I own is a 1-inch tap.
And it didn't use it. So it's smart enough to,
yes, it's smart enough to not use it.
That's so cool.
Now, here's what's kind of interesting. It makes some pretty good decisions. So if we look at what was brought in here, it brought in a 1/2-inch end mill. It brought in a 1/4-inch end mill. So it didn't just try to do everything with this 1/4-inch because it's possible. It actually made a good decision. Hey, we need a 1/2-inch end mill to do all this stuff. And then it brought in the drill for these holes. So wow, it's pretty incredible. And then I could enable in my cut config my end shoe now, and then it would select the optimal tool. But what was really neat, I mean, is you can do it in either way now. You can either say, I have my big end shoe library and my entire shop, and I have this weird feature, and just tell me instantly, boom, what is that tool? Great. I never have to look at a catalog. I just know that the tool's there and it works. Or if you say, hey, I've never bought a tool in my life, right? Or I don't want to be even bothered. Like, I have a bunch of tools in my shop, but we don't really, we don't have a huge amount of consistency to what vendors we use, et cetera. We just kind of order whatever shows up. It's on MSC, or I even know folks, I mean, God bless them, but they buy their tools off Amazon. Like they're not like, super dialed in that. So if you're in that camp, just don't even bother uploading a tool library into Toolpath. and just use these recommendations, and we'll tell you, or the engine will tell you, what tools to use and where to get them. So
that's super cool. The way I see that being really useful is I used to be a design engineer. And before I sold my soul to the manufacturing industry and what I love, um, I try to be careful about who I tell that I'm an engineer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went 5 years of engineering school, man. Yeah. Uh, and then my hobby became like building CNC machines and learning machining. Yeah, it's a whole nother story. But what I was thinking is it's really unfortunate. But the reason I think there's such a disconnect between engineer and machinist or programmer is because I might have explained, or I might have said this on the podcast, so I'll go quick. But I was graduating and I was building like a CNC lathe or whatever for the senior project. And on top of that was a automatic tool changing turret with like a ratchet and pawl. So it just kind of, went one way and then locked in with the stepper motor. It was very simple. I asked one of my buddies who was also graduating in a few months to go tap an M6 hole, and he didn't know what that entailed or what that meant. And I was like, oh, there's a disconnect. Like there's design engineers that are, completing engineering school, knowing nothing about manufacturing. And so this is kind of interesting. So say I'm a design engineer, I've built something. Um, I want to know if it could be manufactured, but this isn't just a nebulous magic tool library now. There are tools and I know where to find them too, right? So before it was a DFM kind of thing where we had the default tool library, which had 600 tools in it, of like varying lengths and diameters and things like that. But they were still kind of nebulous and magical.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like I could have a design engineer, like, before he even sends it to manufacturing, just as a gut check, be like, oh, that tool exists.
But
Yeah,
it's
that's
not in the shop. I think that's the
on the shop
important
too.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, is we want to be really careful in how we design the software. It's like we don't want to just randomly be pulling in tools and saying, yeah, this is generally manufacturable. Because the truth is, like, anything is manufacturable if you want to throw enough money at it. Like,
Careful.
pretty much.
Can you, okay, how would
Square
you,
hole, like, just, yeah,
no,
EDM it. We'll figure out a way.
that one's easy. That one's
Right?
easy. A
Bendy
blind
hole, we have to
hole
cast it.
in a blind hole in something.
Okay, I'm sure something's not
Like
manufacturable.
okay, yeah.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's these gradations of cost, especially with DFM. It's like, how much do you care about this is the real
Mhm.
question for an engineer. Now, it might be, hey, I need this quick turnaround, and I'm like, I can see, okay, our machine shop over there. Let's say you use Toolpath, you're an engineer at a company, and you have a machine shop in-house. Okay, I can tell that our shop guys are not going to have to set anything up for this part, or now I'm just like thinking of like use cases. Like if I work at a company, we have a machine shop,
Yeah.
and I want to make things really easy on them, and I need something fast. I know they'll never do it unless they have all the tools in the machine. I can design something where I know it's all green, no importing of tools, yada, yada, and go say, hey, you can run this. I know you can, right? And then, but for a broader thing of DFM, let's say you want something, quickly turned around. Hey, do I have this tool? Okay, I'll have to bring it in. I can make it. Then you make that decision. And that's sort of how we want automation to work is we expose those decision-making points. Like, what's your intent, right? Do you want to make this with the tools in your machine? Or do you want to bring something in? Depending on all the other factors around, you might make a different decision. And then let's say later, let's say we give you a recommendation. It's like, well, I can get it done with this tool I already have. It's not optimal. But, later down the line, hey, I want to bring this tool in because this is going to be better for this feature. Now that's also really powerful because you have different ways to make this part. There's a lot of ways to do it. Some may be optimized more for cycle time. And then sometimes you just want to optimize for, hey, I don't want to set up any tools today. So with all this, I'm really excited, and to see it come to fruition. And like, I think I used it for the first time yesterday, and I tried that thing I just showed you because it was just a theory in my head that I hadn't told anybody that I thought that might work. And to see it work, I was like, oh my gosh, like we're really on to something here. So shout out to our team too. Everybody I mean, this is a joint effort between um, the engine team building the tool recommendation engine, and then the front end folks making just like a killer experience for it, like just the simplicity of it, and all the stuff that they're doing under the hood that makes it look like just one button is pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. There's maybe not a whole lot aesthetically or within the UI that's changing, but what you can do now, we've thrown around the magic presets or all that, but it feels like magic. And I feel like you had that aha moment the other day. It's funny, you got access to it and then you immediately tried to break it. So that's that's
always thinking
that's
about the next thing, right?
yeah, it's good that the head of product. Listen, everybody, our head of products is trying to break everything that everybody builds right away. So
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think it's good that you have that mindset. You should always be thinking about that. But
Yeah.
that's super slick. I'm trying to think of all the possibilities that this opens up, and how many more users will be able to benefit from it too. In real, like, tangible ways. Because so I'll say a little bit. I used to use the default tool library, and we used to encourage people like, hey, go ahead and throw in your part, check it with the default tool library. That will tell you if it's machinable or not, roughly, right? We've got 600 tools. We called it like the magic tool library. And then we had a starter, we call them cut configs, but a starter library, cut config, that had maybe, I think, like 10 tools in it. It didn't have any drills. And so you could see if a part was like machinable roughly with like just a few tools that you most likely had at your disposal. So that was cool. And then once you feel comfortable with that, then, uploading your tool library and stuff like that. And so now I see it being, I don't care if the default library tells me, like, that 600 tool library tells me if the part's machinable. If there's all these like random tools that I don't even know what they are, right? So that's super slick, where I think we've just built a lot more usability with like the user understanding exactly what tool that is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can make that decision if you want to go buy it or not. Or you can make the decision if you want to accept the job or not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, oh, hey, this part, from what I'm understanding, say I've got a part, I throw my tool library at it, and it's like 80% machinable. And then the tool recommendations like, hey, if you buy these two tools, we can go to 100%.
Yeah.
And that's all I need to know. Oh, I'll accept that job because I can get these tools next day, and let's start cutting.
Yeah.
That's huge. Super cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, in summary, like, kind of, I know this is all new to users, so go poke around at it. Our original intent with this, which I think is awesome, is it's like seriously game changing, is to like get away from that catalog, all this stuff. So we're to take your existing tool library of what's in your shop and build on top of it. But the cool extra thing we found out is we can actually just build on top of nothing. So you can use it either way. I'm gonna poke around more at this whole idea of just starting with, I mean, until I can actually upload just 0 tool libraries. Just starting with telling Toolpath all I have is one 1-inch tap, and then trying to program parts that way. I think it's kind of an interesting thing, and then start with smaller tool libraries that are easy to manage. So there's a lot of ways to slice this, but for those watching, like or listening, I'd encourage you to go poke around at it. And I think Toolpath's kind of also getting to the point with some of these things where you can start doing weird hacks and tricks with it. For example, that hack I just did. It's like, let's just see how this engine responds if we do this. And lo and behold, okay, yeah, I told it some nonsense about my tool library and it did something cool. We're going to go in probably a few weeks and actually build that in so that you can just say, hey, just build from scratch, like nothing like that. So it's fun to kind of break things and then make that breaking of a thing an actual real part of the software.
Yeah, that's super cool. So that's one of the big things that you've had a huge hand in uh, since starting Toolpath. Are there any other things that
Since
you want
starting
to?
at Toolpath,
Sorry,
to be
since
clear, I
starting.
did not start Toolpath.
Oh yeah, sorry, starting at Toolpath. Um, are there any other features you want to tell the users to go try or play with, or anything else that you want to
I think
tackle on the call?
a lot of what we've been doing in Toolpath in my time here has been some serious quality of life things, um, and that's a lot of what I'm excited to kind of highlight. I think tool recommendation engine in my time here is the first like kind of like big feature release, but there's quite a few features and capabilities that have been added that just make Toolpath just keep getting better and better. I think we were talking about using that kind of terminology of like Toolpath just got smarter. And for folks following along, I just encourage you to always be checking back in. I think in the coming months, I want to start doing a much better job of talking in specifics about the things that we're doing. I know recently we added like multi-body part support, right? So you can upload assemblies into Toolpath. Um, and that's a significant amount of dev effort to do all those. That's one of the funny things getting into software that like you don't necessarily think of when you're on the machining side is like building an interface, figuring out like how folks are gonna like work with this in a way that feels natural. Um, and so it's a lot of effort into kind of supporting these things and making it something that like doesn't take explaining. So recently we've done the multi-body part support. We've just been making. I mean, there's been huge engine improvements. Those guys are always just cranking out like okay, this geometry, etc. We need to hit these in better ways. So we're always getting better and better. We've introduced configurations for your stock, so you can tell it more about how you're wanting to grip your stock and how the engine can consider that. I think this will get its own. You should have Sandy on here, honestly, to talk about the work holding stuff that's coming. But Justin already teased that publicly, or Justin and Al teased it publicly. So honestly, I've been so busy with the tool recommendation engine that I haven't even poked around at the work holding yet. But there's exciting stuff. What else is there, Ben?
Yeah, I'll speak on the work holding stuff because not until about a week ago I started playing with it for the webinar. I wanted to do like a little fun little sneak peek, and it was one of those moments that you had with the tool recommendation engine. I was like, why didn't this always exist? This is amazing. So a little bit of background there. We are working toward multi-axis for Toolpath. And one of our main requirements to get to multi-axis is to understand your work holding. Work holding has to be like a number one priority before we tackle multi-axis stuff. And so Phil Mestinghauser and Rob Lockwood actually had a video a long time ago on more of a container method. And then Phil had an AU class, which I think you can watch right now on YouTube or AU or whatever, about kind of taking the container method in Fusion and building out templates and workflows and yada, yada, yada for work holding. And so just taking that a step further, it was pretty hard to adopt, to be quite honest. Really, really cool, game changing and stuff. And so Justin actually worked with Phil quite a bit on this to set up at least our work holding. So we have some HWR, like orange vices. We use 0 point work holding at the shop. And so when I export a program in out of Toolpath into Fusion, right? So we've got that big orange button that says export to Fusion. Normally that just takes the part, takes all the setups, creates all the cam strategies behind it. which is cool in itself. But then you would have to go in and import your work holding, and it'd be a little cumbersome. Now there's just a little checkbox, but there's a lot happening with that checkbox. It says import work holding, and I check it, and then it gives me a selection of, do you want to use fixed jaw, more like a kind of a Kurt or an orange style vise, or self centering. And if I click self centering, what happens is it not only pulls the part in with all the tool paths, but it pulls in the work holding, the clamping, the fixturing, the 0 point, and also stock, and not just a stock body, but parametric stock. So you know how like us nerdy machinists and programmers, we like to set up when we have time, if we're not running a shop and doing a bunch of things like Pete used to do. Uh, you would set up your stock to be parametric. So say you cut it wrong on the saw, or maybe your vendor gave you a bad stock size, you want to be able to quickly update that in CAM. And then the nice thing about Fusion is it's a CAD and CAM system. So if you update something in CAD, it's parametric, it transfers over, calculates the toolpaths for CAM. I don't know why I'm going deep into that, but just in case people don't know, you're probably not listening this long into this podcast.
No, they're all still here.
But yeah. So anyway, yeah, it imports all of that, creates a parametric stock, and also uses joint origins and joints to secure your part. And I don't know if you guys have moved like a non-prismatic part, like a organic, like not perfectly even, so it's hard to find the center of it. Toolpath is doing that automatically. So it's pulling in the stock that we showed in Toolpath into Fusion, and it's centering it perfect. You don't have to like eyeball it. You don't have to create these sketches, and it just works. And yeah, I'm probably going too much into it, but I am like super excited about it.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, I don't need to understand or deal with anything you just said besides there's a drop down where I say I want a self-centering vise, and it handles all the parameterization, all the stuff that the Fusion expert nerds have all the time to do, and really it just drops it in for you. Is that right?
Exactly.
Cool,
Yeah.
because I've tried to do the container method stuff multiple times, and I've gotten through, but I don't think I ever fully understood everything I did to get it there, and it felt like I had just kind of done things a little bit fragile. So to not have to think about it and just drop that right in, that's pretty incredible. And then as far as editing the stock, you're not changing joints or anything. It's just in the Fusion parameters.
Yeah. Cool. For stock size. So right now, we're setting the top of stock to top of part, and then grip height, all of that. That's being respected with inside a toolpath when you set up the stock parameters. So that all gets carried over. But if you want to change the stock size, which this happens a lot, you program a part and then you go, well, this happens a lot to me because I'll just like look at the remnants or something. I'm like, oh, dang it. I need like 2 inch, but I actually have like 3 inch stock. So, now I have to somehow make this box a little bit bigger. You just go into the, forget what it's called. It's like the FX button. It's just the parameters or whatever. And then you can update the X, the Y, and the Z. And because we're using joints, you can also edit a joint and move in X, Y, and Z to adjust where the stock actually sits and things like that. But it's all getting pulled in from Toolpath. So
cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. I will. So right now it's not publicly announced. It's not open to the public, but I heard Justin say this on the webinar. He said, if you buy me some gummy bears, or give me some gummy bears, then you can have access to it. I don't eat gummy bears, and I'm not going to be the one giving it to you, but we can get it in your hands if you want to play with it and give feedback on it. And
I
the
think his
other,
contingency was that you can play with it, but everything is currently subject to Justin deciding that he's breaking everything, and any
right.
work you did is not going to work. So that's kind of why
Yeah,
it's not released yet, because there's still some things that have not been completely locked down, right?
exactly. Yeah. Um, so if you have, I'll try to explain this in the most simple sense that I understand it. But if you have the add-in, now you can click import work holding,
Mm-hmm.
and it will import at least our work holding that we've set up. There's some setup involved that I haven't even dug into to create those joints and everything in the work holding. It will dump it into the top level project in Fusion, and then it will always reference those and pull from them. So if you change anything about those, I think they're called ancestor files or something like that. Then every time you import your part from Toolpath to Fusion, you're as long as you don't change that, it says Toolpath work holding, do not edit.
Okay.
You're fine. But it's possible that it will change until we release it to the public. But you will be able to set up your own work holding and have that automated. So it's one of those like, why were we doing this any other way? And this should have this should have been like done a long time ago. So it's cool that we get to do it and to define how it works.
Yeah, it's neat. I think that's one of the most exciting things about, I mean, what being able to do this in like software land while being a company of real machinists,
Mm-hmm.
um, is just having the time to build these workflow things, and then be aggressive about understanding that we're here and we have the time, like we're blessed with the opportunity to sit here and say, okay, what is the optimal workflow? And then we need to be aggressive about saying, how do we make this accessible to everybody who doesn't have the time to set this up, right? And then we spend a lot more time building something like, you're like, oh, it's a huge thing, but it's so simple. It's a drop down and a button.
Yeah.
How do we, all the work behind the scenes, the idea is people don't have the time for that. Maybe a couple people do, but we get to make it accessible. So I think that's really exciting.
Well, I built so much empathy for like real job shop owners when I was running parts, because there'd be times where like, well, we broke a tool, or we're shipping this overnight to get this part done, and my job wasn't on the line. I wasn't like putting food on the table for my family, because my job was to be you know uh, really just use Toolpath as an R&D tool to run real parts.
Mm-hmm.
But man, was it like it was so tough to like think about anything else until the job was complete,
Yeah.
and we didn't have a machine payment to worry about and things like that. So I had the luxury of focusing on the process instead of like getting parts out the door. And that's kind of what I think we're trying to do at Toolpath is, in order to make everybody a little bit more efficient, like we need to be focusing on the process stuff that people really don't have time for.
That's
Not
like what
because
pre-tool
they're,
is. That's what Magic
yeah,
Tool Uploads is. Yeah.
exactly. Not because you're lazy, but because you're running a job shop, or you're getting parts through the door, or
Yeah.
whatever. So, um, yeah, it's cool.
Nice. That's the mission. I think this is a good note to end on. We're at about an hour and a half here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, this was a fun chat. It was good to get a little update from the product side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to go play with the tool recommendation engine.
I
So,
hope it'll be on staging soon, and then you can
okay,
do it. Otherwise, you're gonna have to ask Justin for
okay,
the fancy way to do it. But yeah,
cool.
but by the time this
Right.
podcast is released, that's out. It'll have been announced. Go play with it. Let us know what you think. Let us know what vendors and libraries you want to see in there next, because we have those
Mhm.
all baked in now, and we want to add more. And just share your feedback. That's how we build this stuff together.
Yeah, yeah, way cool.
Cool.
Well, thanks, Pete.
All right.
I think we can wrap this episode up. Thanks for listening, everybody, and like, subscribe, whatever. Thanks for just being part of Toolpath and the Toolpath story. So we'll see you guys next time.